Welcome to the Church in the Wild podcast. You'll be hearing the words from worship from Sunday, June 21st, where we continue our series on the power of stories. If you want to find out more about Church in the Wild and all of our upcoming events and programs, just go to churchinthewild.org. Thanks for listening.
Okay, hi, I'm Barb, and I've always just thought of the summer solstice as the day with the most amount of daylight hours and the first day of summer, and every place north of the equator experiences the same thing, but not exactly the same thing. The number of daylight hours is very different depending on where you are. We'll have close, like Corey said, we'll have close to 15 and a half hours today. It's 15 hours and 15 minutes around. But if you lived in Florida, it's only about 14 hours today. In Canada, it ranges from 16 hours all the way up to 24 hours today, if you live past the Arctic Circle. So the farther north you are from the equator, the more daylight hours there are today.
It's just 12 hours.
Yes, exactly. Boring. The North Pole is in the middle of its 6 months of continuous daylight. The sun rose on the spring equinox, and it won't set fully until the fall equinox. On the other hand, there's only 12 hours of daylight at the equator. So it always strikes me as strange because normally you'd think of like warmer climates as more sunshine, but it's like the reverse right now. The farther north you go, the more sunshine.
Closer to it, I guess, at the equator.
But I won't get into my earth science lesson, Dolly. If you were in the southern hemisphere, today would be the winter solstice. Their shortest amount of daylight hours occurs today. The farther south you go from the equator, the shorter the daylight hours. So the South Pole gets 0 hours of daylight today, and they're in the middle of their 6 months of darkness. So then I started thinking about how all of these differences in daylight must affect the animals in these places. Because I know that animals have internal rhythms and they're triggered by daylight and darkness periods. So in the summer, the longer periods of daylight cause hormones to be released that make the animals stay active for longer periods of time. Their sleep patterns change so that they stay awake later in the summer to take advantage of the extra light for finding food. And the amount of daylight hours signals them when it's time to molt, when it's time to migrate, when it's time to mate, all kinds of things. And it's not about temperature changes, it's about daylight and the amount of daylight hours. But if you're near the equator, there's a consistent 12 hours of daylight all year long. And those animals can't use changes in daylight hours to signal when to mate. And their activity levels stay pretty much the same all year round. Their internal clocks, I found out, are tuned into the coming and going of the wet and the dry seasons each year. And those happen at pretty consistent times each year. And it's actually the changes in humidity in the air that signal them when it's time to mate. More food will be available during the rainy season, and that's the best time for their babies to be born. So it actually turns out that having a wide variety of daylight hours and having distinct seasons like we have can actually allow animals to live longer. The rest they get in the winter slows cell decay, conserves energy, keeps them safe from predators, and finding out that their counterparts, similar species that live in the tropics, who are active all year long, generally don't live as long. So it's a benefit. So just quick, researchers have done studies where they expose tropical animals to variations in daylight hours like they'd have at our latitudes. And the results were that the animals got all messed up. Their reproduction cycles and their foraging cycles got misaligned and reproduction rates went way down. They haven't evolved to have the same responses to changing daylight that our animals have. When animals from our latitudes are exposed to constant daylight periods, like you find in the tropics, they've got big problems too. Their whole biological clock is thrown off. They're breeding, they're molting, their foraging patterns, they're all hardwired in, and they depend on these changing amounts of daylight to start the cycles in motion. And we humans react to the daylight changes too. We produce more serotonin or melatonin, depending on the daylight periods. But in the summer, we release more serotonin on these longer summer days, and it supposedly improves our moods, helps the immune system, and improves the our digestion and our memory. And during the shorter winter days, we produce more melatonin, and that helps us to sleep more. So the summer solstice represents a lot more than just the first day of summer. And all of nature, including us, have deep-rooted biological responses to these longer days and shorter nights. So try to spend as much time outdoors as possible this summer and soak up that sunshine.
And now we've got our poem. A poem and a lesson from Dr. Bob.
Hello, I'm Bob. Pronouns are they or she. Our poem today is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And I've been asked to comment on it and ruin your day by telling you that you've been wrong about it your whole life. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both, that morning, equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So, one of the things that Corey's been talking about is stories, and the stories we tell ourselves. And the whole point of this poem is that the last part, which is the part that everybody quotes affirmatively, in the context of this poem is wrong. It's the whole point is that the last verse is BS. The paths are the same. If you go up and read the context, I took the other was just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though, as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. So the whole point is that there's no criteria for making the decision at all. And the choice that he makes is not an inspired choice, it's just a random choice. And the point of the last stanza is that the speaker of the poem has invented meaning and significance where there wasn't any. So it's about a way of sort of looking back through the lens of memory and redescribing one's experience in a way that was not accurate to the experience of the time. So I think that if we think about this, one of the things that Corey was talking about last time was making meaning, and that's one of the things that we get to do is to make meaning. There are two sides to that, of course. You can make truth, or you can impose your will over the world, and I think that that's sort of what this is after. There's a sort of ego that sneaks in here at the end and tries to claim something for itself that isn't there. So we have on one extreme a sort of, this isn't like Captain Ahab or anything like that, but that's essentially what Ahab does. He sees the blankness and the whiteness and the nothingness of the whale and intends to impose all of his sins and frustrations and resentments onto this animal so that he can destroy it. So I didn't prepare anything because I would go on for much longer than I have, so I'm just going to stop there.
Thank you. I did not know any of that. That's great.
Hi, I'm Chris. Wisdom today comes from Reverend Scott McRae, co-founder of Sojourners Institute. Every person carries stories that shape how they understand themselves, others, and the sacred. Some of these stories support growth and freedom. Others can quietly limit what feels possible.
All got stories. That's our theme this month. Not quite. Stories are our superpower. I'm calling it. I love that you got your superheroes there. That is our power. We get to make meaning of things. We get to tell the story. Since the beginning of our species, humans have been sharing stories to make meaning of the world around us. We get to create, right? Imago Dei, in the image of the divine. We are creators, just like our Creator. We make meaning with stories. And so last week we started in talking about origin stories, the creation stories from all the different cultures around the world. Not only do they explain why things are the way they are, but they help us understand our place in the web of life, our connection to the divine, and the role that we have to play as our people. You know, all these different cultures, it sort of helped them understand what was their purpose here on earth and how were they maybe different from other groups of humans. And every creation story, it's so fascinating to read all the different ones, right? Because primarily we know the Adam and Eve, the 7 days, that's sort of the prevailing creation story. But if you just Google some other alternative creation stories, it's so cool to read them. And some things that they all have in common is they all have a connection to spirit, to some higher power, some godly being comes and helps get things started here on earth. So that's really cool. I mean, when you find like the things that all the stories have in common, that to me is where I find the truth, with the capital T behind the story, right? So they all have this connection to spirit, and they help shape the reality of the group of people that have that story as their origin story. Because stories are powerful. If there's anything we walk away from this month, I hope it's that. Stories are powerful and important. And if we want to make change in any area of our life, we are wise to start with the story that we're telling ourselves and the story that we're telling the rest of the world about that thing. Stories are powerful. Imagine, if you will, if our current culture had a different prevailing creation story as the story of our origin, other than Adam and Eve. Could you imagine what that might be like? There's so much that could be different. And we can look at the different cultures with their different creation stories and see how that story affected the sort of course of their life as a culture. So I think it's just important to remember those stories that we're given, not just the creation stories that we're taught, but also our personal origin stories, like the story about how you were born and how you got here, and the story about your family and how they got here, right? Because we all came from somewhere. We're not from here. So those stories about how we arrived on planet Earth are powerful. And sometimes it's fascinating. You learn after living your whole life with this story, you learn that it was wrong. or there's a part that was like not, you didn't know. You all of a sudden got new information, right? Those things are fascinating, how they suddenly can shift our whole worldview. So pay attention to those stories we were given. And now this week, we're talking about the stories we tell ourselves. So these are things that we might never even say out loud, but they're the stories that run through our minds all day long. We create our reality. Right? Can we all agree on that? Because that's a pretty profound truth to really let sink in. That we create our own reality. And a lot of times I think that happens without us having an awareness that that's what's happening. We just walk around with this, script in our head, going through, saying all the things our brains say to us all day long, and we forget that we are the ones writing that story. And if we don't like it, we can change it. Obviously, things happen to us, right? That we can't control. That's life. Right? Yeah. But then we get to choose how we respond. We get to choose the story we tell about what happened. We get to write the story that we tell ourselves about what's going on. A few years ago, we read a book together called The 8 Master Lessons of Nature by Gary Ferguson. This book had a profound effect on me, and I highly recommend it. And it maybe we just celebrated 5 years. Maybe we ought to read it again together, because I don't know if everybody has read it, and we really should. In the 8 Master Lessons of Nature, Gary Ferguson shares this Taoist tale. So sit back. You're going to get a story. There was a humble farmer living in southern China, the story goes, and one day the latch on the stall of his most trusted workhorse came loose. Quick on its feet, the horse ran out of the barn and disappeared into the countryside. Terrible luck, his neighbors offered, shaking their heads with genuine sadness for him. Maybe, maybe not, the old farmer said. The very next day, not only did the horse come back, but he was attended by 3 other wild horses. Incredibly, the 4 animals strolled into the corral next to the barn and began to eat the hay. What a miracle, the neighbor said. A more wonderful thing could not have happened. Maybe, was all the farmer said. Then the next day, the dawn clear and bright, and the farmer's son decided to take a chance at riding one of the new untamed horses. No sooner had he climbed on the animal's back than it took off running and bucked against a rail of the corral, breaking the young man's leg. Back came the neighbors, this time full of sympathy. Such bad luck, they offered, sincerely sad for him. Maybe, said the farmer, but maybe not. The following day, a team of brusque military recruiters came to the area, knocking on every door to secure young men for a war brewing in the hills far to the west. Seeing the farmer's son had a broken leg, the recruiters passed him by. Such fortune, exclaimed the neighbors, astonished by how well things had worked out. Maybe, said the farmer, maybe not. I wish I had grown up hearing that parable in church. And it has echoes of other parables I did hear in church. the neighbors remind me of Job's friends. Always coming in with something, right? Always those neighbors in every story. But I read this story and it's like it's like an invitation to a whole new life. Like you could just not judge everything for being good or bad. You could just accept what is and see what happens next, right? Like you could just respond as needed. I'm sure he went and tended his son and, splinted the leg and did what needed to be done. But the farmer rode those waves, right? Whereas his neighbors were getting crashed around by the ups and downs, and they weren't even the neighbors' problems. It was it was the farmer. But they were just up and down about everything, right? And so seeing that difference is what really struck me in how we respond to the ups and downs in life. And this principle in Taoism is called Wu Wei. And that literally means like, it's hard to find an exact translation, but it's like unforced flow. I mean, we would colloquially say, go with the flow, right? You just sort of take what comes and just see what happens next. Respond to what needs to be responded to, but it's that internal chatter around everything that happens that just isn't necessary, right? It doesn't affect the outcome other than it makes me, anyway, all stressed, and it literally breaks down your body faster. So while we get to make meaning of life, of the things around us, the farmer resisted assigning judgment in the moment. Radical acceptance. I don't know about anyone else, but when I think about how we spend our days walking around the world, assigning, oh, that's good, oh, that's bad, I gotta fix this, oh, this, oh, that. It's exhausting to walk around, just driving around, oh, what's that? Oh, that's cool. Oh, it's just like this constant assigning good and bad, which, right, our brains had to do to survive. It's this evolutionary feature of the human brain. We have to be able to look at the world and say, this is edible, that's not. We categorize. But then there's this spirit that we also possess that can observe those thoughts, that can say, maybe, maybe not, and can wait to see what comes next through it all. So if we are experiencing distress, negative emotions, hardships, can we tell ourselves a different story about them? That to me is the invitation here of Wu Wei, of this Taoist principle. Maybe, maybe not.
You never saw Hee Haw, right?
Hee Haw, Hee Haw.
There's a running gag that every so often, I think it's in the barbershop. Oh, Roy Clark would say something happened to him, and Gordy would say, oh, well, that's bad. No, that's good, because then this happened because of that. Oh, that's good. No, that's bad. Because,
Yeah.
And that's
It's the Tao of Hee Haw.
like,
I love
living
it.
with that in my head since
I love it. Hee haw. And so the invitation to tell a different story, I think it also helps when we can invite in another character in here, right? I can't tell you how often I will stop and say, what would Ted Lasso do here?
because to me, he's like a real life version of someone who just sees the best in everyone and handles the things in life that come at you. He's not perfect, right? But he's such a great example. So who are those other characters that inspire you and you can invite into your story to help you retell it? What's that? Other people or real people, right? It doesn't have to be.
My mother.
Yeah.
Always just took everything. Okay, well, we'll make the best of it. See what happens.
Cross that bridge when you get to it.
She didn't borrow trouble the way I always do inside my head.
The best of all possible worlds. Isn't it Voltaire?
Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Lion King, Timon and Pumbaa, Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, best of both worlds, right? I mean, things can happen and maybe not. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. Or is there a choice I have to make here? Well, why not do both somehow? Or, you know. Or time will tell, right? Yeah. So sometimes, yeah, there's these good lines we get too. We can invite in and repeat. There's a beautiful poet, John Rodell, who has this great little line that I'm sure he came from Taoism. But he says, when you're between a rock and a hard place, be water. So, and it was so funny. A friend sent me that little, meme of that beautiful artwork with those words. And then the next day she was stressing out about something and I just sent it back to her. Like, how can you be water in this situation? I didn't know. I didn't have a suggestion. I just offered that question. And she came up with a way to just be for a minute. And that was the other thing. I was like, well, I could just sleep tonight and make a decision tomorrow. That's how she decided she could be water. I was like, that sounds amazing. Right. I mean, that's the classic, right? What would Jesus do? Well, take a nap in the middle of a storm is always an option. Yeah. Lay down. Run away. Go up the mountain.
Sometimes it's hard to differentiate, though, between Taoism and apathy, because like my neighbor, he drives me nuts because things will happen and I'll say, geez, Chuck, I'm sorry to hear that. And he'll say, it is what it is. And, and that drives me nuts. I don't know if he's being apathetic or if he's, maybe he's deep and maybe he's a Taoist. And I
Worrying
just don't
about
know.
it isn't going to change things. That's
Yeah, that is an important difference, though, right? Because apathy is dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Apathy? Not caring. Because it's not caring, right? I'm sure the farmer cared that his son's leg got broken, right? He had caring for his son, but he reserved judgment and he reserved getting stressed out. He did what needed to be done. He showed care, I'm assuming. It doesn't tell us, and then moved on, right? Time will tell that. But yeah, this is a good point and I think it has to do with the story that you're telling yourself in your brain.
The creed of Alcoholics Anonymous sums it up.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, they were going to say that I've been through it. Help me to recognize the things that I can change, recognize the things that I can't change, and to know the difference between the two. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess what's also bad though, because like I'll
Serenity
on the outside I will act like, oh, like whatever it is what it is, so, and like internally I'll kill a lot of stuff. Everyone else is like saying.
I am right there with you, Wesley. It's that knowing that, well, worrying about it, you know, making a big deal isn't going to change anything. This is what's happening, but on the inside, you're like, ah. Finding the serenity from the serenity prayer to know, to match your outer response with your inner workings. That's a lifelong process for some of us.
I think some of it goes down to trusting the Lord too. There's a spiritual aspect in this. You want to fix everything yourself, you know, and you can't.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my staff at the jail, I said, "You're not the Messiah. The job was already taken," and I haven't totally learned that yet. But.
Yeah. Yeah, trusting, right? The long game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that goes to like, you know, back to the story, back to the theme of the story. Okay. Back to the theme of the story. It's just like, if we jump to the conclusion of the story, we ruin like the telling of it, you know? So sometimes that's what our human nature wants to do because we live in this time portal. But going to what he said, the higher power has the, you know, the beginning, the end of the story. I know all the pieces that go through here, so I think that's the internal, external conflict we usually have. It's like there's processing that's like beyond me that I have to make peace with and have faith that it'll, you know, all end up.
Zoom out.
In the end,
Yeah.
all end up for my good.
Ooh.
You know, they say hindsight's 20/20, and sometimes you look back at stuff and like, you know, actually, that wasn't such a bad thing. This is what happened out of that.
Right.
I remember my wife was pregnant with Wesley. We lost our health insurance almost in the 3rd trimester.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh God, I had this like huge bill, but it worked out. We were actually better off because the insurance we did pick up, turns out the one we had sucked. And her coworkers, they got stiff with like everything. So we were actually ahead of the game. So that was just one little example.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're like, you're freaking out, but sometimes God's in control.
Yeah. One of our wild saints, Alice Walker, says, storyteller herself, right? She says, the process of storytelling is itself a healing process. Your own story is a gateway to a new perception of your life. So just taking a moment to bring awareness to the story you're telling yourself and engaging it as the healing process it can be, can help you have a new perception of your life, she says. And I always remind folks, make sure the story you're telling in your head is actually your own words. Because there's a lot of times people tell me, or I myself will hear, Corey, why did you do, like this is the thoughts in my head. Those aren't my words, right? I don't usually speak to myself saying, you messed up. Like that's the words we heard over and over and over again as kids growing up, that we've just internalized as our own thoughts. So catching those and saying, oh, that's not me. That's someone else, right? Playing out in your own brain. Making sure that the stories we're telling are our own. And this whole concept, the stories we tell ourselves, how we frame our lives, we create our own reality. This is why, for the last 5 years, we have taken time at the end of worship to set an intention for the week ahead. It could just be saying it out loud once. It could be something you end up using as a mantra throughout the week. It could be something you say each day as an affirmation at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. But these practices that have been passed down for eons of setting an intention, speaking your affirmations, having a mantra, they are what help us tell our stories to ourselves in hopefully healthy, productive ways. These are ways that we can speak our desire for our lives into reality. And it's incredible that I love when science catches up with spirituality. It happens all the time. But they're seeing MRI data now. They're scanning people in an MRI when they are telling themselves positive affirmations. And their brains are literally rewiring as they speak those words aloud. And this repetitive, positive or negative statements that we say to ourselves reshape our brains. So again, if you're constantly saying, what's the matter with you? Oh, you messed up again. You know, like the things that we say over and over affect us at a physical, biological level. We create our reality. And to me, that is some very good news. Because despite what the world might throw at us, we get to decide how we respond. And as we've said around the circle already, we get to choose trust. We get to choose the long game. We get to take a moment and zoom out and say, whatever that mantra is, God's in control, or the moral arc of the universe is long and it bends towards justice. You know, whatever these lines are that remind us we are going to be okay. All will be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, is one of my favorites from Julian of Norwich. We get to pause and remind ourselves and tell ourselves that story about what's happening to us. And that is, to me, some great news, that we aren't subject to the highs and lows. We don't have to be lifted up and crashed down by every wave of life. We can ride them on top serenely, trusting that wherever the water's taking us, it will be good. So be mindful of the stories you tell yourself this week and find opportunities to rewrite them in positive, healing, uplifting ways. We'll make it so. We lift up, trusting in the great love of the universe, that love will prevail in all of these situations. And we are going to move into a time of prayer and meditation now.
Start relaxing and getting comfortable. However that feels for you. As you hear these words and just try to let go of tension. And you can close your eyes, stare off into the distance, whatever helps you to focus and go inside. Gentle me, Holy One, into an unclenched moment. A deep breath, a letting go of heavy experiences, of shriveling anxieties, of dead certainties that, softened by the silence, surrounded by the light, and open to the mystery, I may be found by wholeness, upheld by the unfathomable, entranced by the simple, and filled
with a joy that is you. And so now we're going to move into a time of silence. And then I'll bring you out with a few more words. Now I invite you to come back to your bodies or wherever you've been. Come back from there and to the present moment. And I'll share these words with you. Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life we have refused again and again until now. Until now.
What story are we telling ourselves this week? What word or phrase do you want to set as your intention for the next 7 days?
Green, both as in getting out in nature and of course the color.
Green. Get green. This is the greenest the world ever gets. Slow and steady.
Be water.
Be water. I'm a Pisces. You're a Pisces too, right? We get to be water for sure. Be water. That's a good one. Yeah, I think I'll claim it. Anybody else? Got an intention? Don't react so quickly. Practice the pause.
It's so hard. Judge the face. So hard.
So hard.
T-shirt. Practice the pause.
Practice the pause. Yeah, the goslings. Yeah, there's 2 adults and 2 teenager geese.
Teenager geese. Yay!
Out there. All right.
On Vestal Road the other day, and it suddenly came to like a stop, and I was like, what the heck's going on? And all of a sudden you see a mom and like a duck and like a mom duck and like all these little like ducks waddling. So like there was literally like 4 or 5 cars just like stuck in traffic waiting for them to cross.
Good.
It was so cute.
Yay. Well, whatever intention you set, I hope we will all live with intention, because what we do matters. Even the things we tell ourselves in our heads matter because we are all connected. So we're going to share our deep peace blessing, embody it with some basic movements, and take it with us to share this deep peace with everybody else who needs it. Deep peace of running wave to you. Deep peace of flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the source of peace to you. And we'll sing peace, salam, shalom. 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 Thank you all for your great stories. Yes.
Thanks for listening. If you want to support Church in the Wild and the work we do in striving for environmental and social justice, just head on over to our website, churchinthewild.org, and click the donate link at the top. There you can make a donation, set yourself up as a recurring supporter, or you can buy something from our Redbubble shop. We're so glad you're with us on this journey, following the Spirit through creation, adventure, and restoration. Until next time.